Hello, and welcome to the Happy Horse Nutrition Podcast. I'm Dr Nerida, and today I'm excited to have Liz Owens join us to discuss the FEI's Be a Guardian initiative and where nutrition fits into your horse's welfare, which, spoiler alert, is pretty much everywhere. Liz Owens is someone I have both worked alongside and consider a mentor. She is a highly respected animal nutritionist with a degree in agricultural science and honours in equine nutrition from the University of Western Australia. Her equine nutrition journey includes nearly 20 years as consulting nutritionist for the Australian equestrian team, advising riders through their major international competitions including the Atlanta and Beijing Olympics. As you listen to Liz speak, you will also realise she gives us a unique perspective on this topic as both nutritionist and highly accomplished Grand Prix dressage rider who has trained horses to Grand Prix level, won 7 Australian championships and was long-listed for the 2000 Olympic Games. This combination of scientific expertise and high-level competitive experience gives Liz invaluable insight on what it truly takes to keep horses healthy, sound and performing at their best throughout their careers, while also taking care to ensure their welfare is our primary concern. So settle in for a discussion that involves a few soapboxes and passionate moments as Liz and I set out to write what the FEI's nutrition guidelines should look like. Liz Owens, welcome to the Happy Horse Nutrition Podcast. So it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Nerida.
Oh, so as a little bit of a background, and I don't know whether I've ever told you this story, Liz, but when I was a PhD student, you did a nutrition presentation in Tamworth. And I remember coming and sitting in the audience and just going, oh, this is so cool. Like I was studying horse nutrition, but was learning so much along the way. So you've always been someone that I have looked up to in my career. I've never told you that, I don't think, before. So I wanted to start out with that because I do have so much respect for you as a nutritionist and a horse person. And it's just wonderful to have you with us today. So to start, can I just get you to introduce yourself? You've got an extensive background in the horse industry, so I'll hand over to you to fill us in.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nerida, and I appreciate that background. It's really nice when people have attended talks and actually remember them. I've got a few memories of talks where perhaps people were not quite so polite. So yeah, no, I've had I'm the daughter of a wallaby, so a rugby playing wallaby, my father. Wow. And he was an Olympic yachtsman. So, no connection with horses at all. But I was one of those tragics that, from as long as I can remember, in a suburban house in both Brisbane and then in Perth, all I wanted to do was to have a horse and to ride. So it was an affliction. My mother said she couldn't have been more surprised if I'd said I wanted to go hang gliding. So it was completely out of context, but it was just something I just had to do. And thankfully my parents were able to indulge me, but not to a great extent. We didn't have a lot of money, so it was hard graft. So on that, so I've made some terrible mistakes, which I know we'll probably talk about in feeding. But so I started off riding, and professionally I had an interest in nutrition, and in fact I was given a scholarship to study human nutrition even before I'd finished school, which my mother encouraged me to do because I wanted to do agricultural science, and she said, girls don't do ag science, take up this nutrition offer, which I did. And I think I lasted 6 weeks. I absolutely hated it, and could not wait to get into ag science the following year. So that's what I did. So I went to the University of WA and did agricultural science with a major in animal production, and did my honours research on equine nutrition, which again was seriously frowned on by the animal scientists that worked at UWA at the time. And so, but I sort of stuck with it, and I still would describe myself as a generalist nutritionist. So I've been very fortunate in the places that I have worked and gained tremendous experience, as we tend to once we leave university and leave study. worked across a whole range. I had to work across a whole range of species. So there was no opportunity for me to just do horses. So at that time, horse feed, was made in mills that made ruminant feed, that made pig feed, that made poultry feed, that made rat and guinea pig pellets, that made camel feed, that made anything and everything. And so I had to, get across kind of all of these species in a sense. But horses was always the one where I would be most interested in any opportunity I had to study in that, and to work with horses and formulate diets for horses I took. So on the back of that, my father was chair of the Equestrian Australia board, and he was chair for 11 years, which is some sort of record, because now we go through chairs of EA boards about every 12 months. But back then there was a bit more stability, and we were sending teams overseas to World Games, and we had the World Equestrian Games in Gawler, the World 3-Day Event Championships, in Gawler in 1986, I think, before most of your listeners were born. And so my father was fielding all these queries from visiting countries that were bringing horses to Australia. They were quarantining at Torrens Island, and he was fielding all these queries about, we feed this, what feed can we get? They couldn't bring their feed in because of restrictions. They weren't irradiating large amounts of feed at that time. And so I got called in to liaise with some feed mills in South Australia to try and formulate some diets that mimicked what they would have been on in the UK. So I got very involved with the British teams and the German teams and the Dutch teams and so on in terms of trying to facilitate the diets and information about Australian feedstuffs and so forth. So on the back of that, I became the consulting nutritionist for the Australian equestrian team, which is something, as a role, I sort of did, all voluntary, of course, everything's wrong, which I did for, I don't know, it would have been close to 20 years. It morphed into doing some training of riders in terms of feed management and catering too. So we had Atlanta Olympics during that time, which was of course very, very hot. So I provided advice as much as I could to the Australian team on how to manage it and with long distance travel and so on. So, and since then I've worked at I was involved in the Beijing Olympics, which of course were held in Hong Kong for the horses, and I worked on the ground there as a partner to the feed supplier. And subsequent to that, I was then on the board of might have been on the board of no, I wasn't yet. No, I hadn't learned that lesson. I was asked to be the chef to keep for the Australian dressage team at the World Games in Cannes, and work with them. Nutrition was part of that, but that was all more about team management. So, and I have served on the board of Equestrian Australia. I'm an accredited coach. I was an accredited judge, and all aspects of it. I did some research on postgrad research through the Australian Institute of Sport on diets and workloads and feeding and so forth. So yeah, it's been a colourful career.
Definitely. And something you haven't mentioned is that you took your love of horses, and isn't it funny how we're just born with this?
No, I know, it's a curse.
Well, it depends which way. I love my love of horses, but yeah, when you have to drag these giant animals around in your life, maybe it is a curse.
No, anyway.
It is just something that we're born with, I think. But what you didn't mention is that you took that love of horses as a kid and have competed all the way through to Grand Prix level as a dressage rider.
Yeah, I have. I was actually longlisted for the 2000 Games. And I was non-travelling reserve for European Championships when Australia was invited to compete there. And so I've trained 2 horses through to Grand Prix. I've won 7 Australian Championships. 5 of those are at FEI level, international level, but not Grand Prix specifically. But so I've had a lot of fun training horses. I mean, dressage is my first love. I just love working with their minds and their bodies, to keep them sound and happy and for as long as possible. So that's been fantastic, but that's a whole another level of expense. But I have a lot of respect for the Australian riders that compete internationally and can maintain that level of intensity and commitment, because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. So it's talking about being a rider and having horses and competing at very high levels leads us nicely into what our topic of discussion is today, and that's the FEI's Be a Guardian initiative. So can you talk us through what that is, like what your understanding of what that is?
Yeah, so what's transpired there is, and it's been good to see, and I think I mentioned the Atlanta Olympics before, but it was in a previous games in Barcelona. My father was actually chef de mission for the Australian equestrian team at that Olympics, and we won gold there in the eventers. But that was when it was starting to be more televised, and there was a lot of very distressing images of horses under enormous heat stress, because Barcelona gets very hot at those Olympics, and so there was a lot of pressure on the sport, being the Fédération Equestrienne Internationale, to start to bring in some controls for the environmental conditions under which horses were allowed to compete, and so this led to them coming up with a sort of a hot weather policy, and then they further expanded that with a lot of research for the Atlanta Olympics, which brought some real change in terms of the way those heat loads are managed on the grounds. So that's a very good thing, and that's grown, tremendously over the time, and probably the biggest driver has been externally, not necessarily internally, through social media pressures, and the sharing of photographs, and everybody's filming everybody all the time and posting it on social media, which is it's got its up and its downside. The upside is that it really shone a light on the need to strengthen the obligations around horse welfare for riders and trainers and everybody involved with horses in the sport, which is, as includes eventing and show jumping and endurance and dressage and carriage driving and so on, vaulting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the Be a Guardian is a real mindset shift, really, isn't it? Like we've gone from, and I remember it was maybe 10 years ago that I can't remember, I've been racking my brains today trying to remember what brought it on for me, but going from thinking, I'm riding my horse to train my horse and to get my horse fit, and this is all good for the horse, to shifting that, and now when I ride my horse, I'm like, thank you for taking me for a ride, because I know you're not doing it for your benefit, it's completely for my benefit.
Yes, exactly.
You don't need to know how to do the fancy things that we teach you to do to survive. None of that is necessary in their life. It's all completely for our benefit. So I guess it's and it was at the Australasian Equine Science Symposium back in May that I heard you first speak about this, and I I don't compete in anything at the moment, so I wasn't aware of, and I'm also not on social media, so I don't see these things. And when you mentioned the Be a Guardian, it just sort of like it felt so good to me to go, that is such a cool way to get people to shift this mindset from I own that horse to I am the guardian of this horse, and therefore it's completely my responsibility to make sure it's okay.
Yes, exactly, and I think it's a very important mindset shift. And I remember the first time I thought about this was trying to teach a horse to load, and not load on a really dodgy float. And I would have been about 16, 17, and the horse I knew nothing, and the horse didn't want to go on and so forth. And then I remember, because I had all hundreds of horse books, and I remember reading about horses are fright and flight animals, and and they talked about the impacts of confinement, and this is long before we had the 5 freedoms and so on, and the line from this book was, if you were a horse, you would never go on a float, because it goes against everything in your nature, and it is your job as the trainer to instill confidence in the horse, so that they will counter all of those natural tendencies to step onto a float. And I thought, oh, aren't they amazing? Yeah, if I was a horse, I wouldn't get on a float ever. And yet they do, and then they allow you to, as you say, to subject them to all sorts of other things. So yeah, I think it's a very important mindset. But I mean, thinking riders, should come to this conclusion themselves, that their horses are sort of partners. But sadly they don't. So this is where the FEI and the local national federations have a responsibility, and thoroughbred trainers or whatever groups are involved in mentoring and supervising people involved in the training of horses, certainly.
Yeah, and just that, to remember that everything they do is for our benefit, not theirs.
Yes. No, not theirs.
So there's many, many aspects, and you've already mentioned a few times now the Barcelona Olympics and the Atlanta Olympics, and the impact of heat and humidity on horses, and how that sort of that's such an important part of welfare. The FEI have their heat and humidity scale now to advise
hot weather policy
to advise when it's safe to compete and when it's not, and there's lots of other aspects of welfare. And they're all important, but given that you're a nutritionist and I'm a nutritionist, and this is a nutrition podcast, let's just chat about the nutrition and where that fits into welfare. And so I guess the first question is, what are the areas of feeding and nutrition that the FEI are most focused on with regards to nutrition? Liz just pulled a really funny face at me that none of you can see.
Because, in preparation, I really interrogated the FEI welfare documents, and I've got a team working on this, and certainly nutrition is part of the framework that they're developing. But so far, their only action seems to have been signing on Cavalor as a nutrition advisor, which is the feed company from the UK, or would be the Europe, I'm not sure, but they're kind of their partners, I suppose, in this process, which is great. I'm sure they're delivering tremendous value, and they have extraordinary expertise behind them. But I would have liked to have seen it start off at at the basics a little bit, which is the bits that I certainly see people missing, and is a source of great frustration to me. And I don't. Just despite our best efforts, then that's collectively all of us that have ever presented a nutrition talk anywhere in the country, and we must be racking up thousands between us now, Nerida. We still can't seem to get the basic message across into what this animal actually needs. And
I think it's getting better. Like I think we definitely are having an impact. There's still a long way to go until we've got sort of all of the different areas of the horse industry around the world behind all of this. But if there's nothing, and I wasn't aware of that, I thought that there would at least be some things specified. So let's make the specifications for the FEI, shall we?
Do that.
Right here, right now. So what are, from a welfare perspective, I mean, there's so many areas of feeding we could talk about, but strictly from a welfare perspective, what are the most important aspects of feeding from your perspective? And from your perspective, I guess, as a very high-level competitor.
I would say it's absolutely fibre, and fibre quality and fibre quantity is the most crucial thing. And it comes back to, how did this horse's digestive, physiology come about? It's a fright and flight animal. It's a hindgut fermenter. it's got a small volume stomach and so forth, and it needs to chew long stem roughage. And I see just those simple understandings failing time and again. And people are tend to start to focus on, well, they feed their horses like they're people, and they say, oh, they won't eat long stem roughage that requires a lot of chewing because they don't like it. They much prefer lucerne, and I go, but it's not what they need. What they need is long stem roughage, heaps of it, for them to, and they need it available all the time,
24/7. Yeah,
all the time, not just before and after work or when your mum throws them a biscuit. And that to me is absolutely crucial, is try and get that message across constantly. I mean, I think in Europe, of course, they do have horsage, ensiled fibers for horses, and really beautiful quality stuff. And so that is, that's a plus as well. But in Australia, people think chaff is hay, and that's all they need. So yeah, there's a long way to go with that. The other thing that and of course the FEI is playing in this space with developing apps where people can check on banned substances and herbal products, which is usually the source of most of the positive swabs that we see in horses, and people feeding these ingredients to counter what is actually just a fundamental symptom of feeding mismanagement. If they fed them correctly, which is not that complex, they wouldn't need all these, as I call them, ground bat swings and foo-foo dust to counter the problems that they perceive exist.
Yes. Yep. Yep. I just the podcast that came out this week is does my horse need a supplement? And for a majority of that, I spoke about if your diet is balanced, 90% of the time or more, horses don't need problem-solving supplements. I mean, yes, salt, sometimes electrolytes, particularly in very hot and humid weather in certain situations. But, even electrolytes, if you're feeding salt and you've got plenty of roughage, then you don't need, in most cases, an electrolyte supplement. And, yeah, I agree with you. If the base diet is good, the horses won't have most of the problems that we cause as humans by feeding them the way that we feed them.
Correct. And I have seen this in at Olympic Games, and even feed quality. And I remember when I was in Beijing, and in Hong Kong, so it was Beijing Olympics, and there was containers that had come out from Europe for the team horses, German and Dutch teams and French teams and so forth, big containers of feed that were filled some months prior and sent from Europe to Hong Kong, and they didn't get the settings of the container right because they're not used to exporting to a hot, humid climate, and they didn't add mold inhibitors in there, and they didn't do a whole range of things. The moisture content was too high to start with. And when they arrived and we opened the container, these bags, they were green, Nerida. They were green. And I remember a team vet saying to me, well, how much mold is too much?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I mean, even invisible mold is...
And I'm like, mate, it's crawling with green.
Yeah.
I don't need to test this to let you know that this is not something you should feed it. And horse, much less an Olympic show jumper. Like, no, just no.
So from a welfare perspective, like, number one, having forage available 24/7, because that's their natural way to be. I love, and I talk about it all the time, I love the statistic that horses have been on the earth for 99.99% of their time without humans involved in their lives. So for all that time, they were able to forage freely, and then we come along and completely change the way they're fed. And I actually can't understand why it's not, I don't know, legislated in some way, but illegal to keep a horse anywhere without access to forage, be that tied to a truck, on competition day, be it in its stable, be it like it should be, in my opinion, as a nutritionist, and I'm pretty sure that given you're nodding your head, you agree with me, that you just should not be allowed to have a horse that doesn't have some sort of forage in front of it to chew on, even if it's just straw.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more. Let's start a petition, because that would be, if I was again writing the FEI guidelines on nutrition as part of a welfare strategy, that would be number one. You cannot have a horse at any time without access to roughage.
And then what would be your number two?
My number two would
be number one.
Yeah. The number two would be is to be able to measure what you're feeding, and that's, we could break that down into weight. How much are you actually feeding? Do you know what weight of feed? I mean, I still get people sending me diets, with globs and jam jars and dippers fulls, as if they're standard international units of measurement, which of course they are not. And it should be, they should understand what weight they're feeding, and they should understand its composition. Like if it's a commercial feed, make sure it's got a declared analysis, make sure it's got an expiry date, make sure you know where it came from and what's in it. And people don't, they feed them things that come in white bags. And that's unlabeled, non-accredited, compound feeds or supplements should be banned.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw a supplement. I was adding some products to the My Happy Horse database, so the software that we're building, and it's the label said it had no nutritional values, and its composition was, in every 10 grams of this product, there was 30 grams of, I know, it was nonsensical. And I'm like, and people feed these to their horses, and it costs nearly $4 a day to do that. But the thing that it does make me, this is what it sounds like when you get two nutritionists on their soapbox. But I guess the thing is that so many horse owners are like you and I, who grew up. I mean, we love our horses, love them, and we want to do the best thing for them. And when we understand, I mean, you and I understand nutrition very well because it's our profession. But when you don't, like, I know I take myself out buying a car. No idea. Like, I just don't know enough about the mechanics of a car to be able to look at a car and go, that's a good car and that's not. And I guess I look at nutrition from that perspective for a majority of the horse industry. And when you don't know what you're looking at, it's so much harder to make informed decisions.
Yeah. And I mean, that was, I think horses often do well in spite of us, not because of us.
Yeah.
Coming to your point about 99.9% of the time they've done beautifully without us. And it's because they're relatively robust that they survive the abuses that we heap upon them. But ignorance is not an excuse. And, I made some awful mistakes with horses early on because I couldn't find enough information about how to do it well. And horse people do tend to take advice from anybody who'll chat to them on the back of a float or now on social media on some of these sites, and they're told the most diabolical things. But even elite riders, like we had an elite rider who told our team vet her horse was allergic to air. Yeah. So just, I don't know how you legislate against stupidity, but that would be allergies would be my other pet hate of people making decisions on their horse's nutrition based on unqualified advice, such as your horses. And I've had people tell me, "Oh, my horse can't have any protein. He's allergic to protein." No, he's not. No, he isn't. I don't care what you say, he's not. Or my horse is allergic to oats. No, it could be something else. that
Mm,
troubles
yeah.
him about, but he doesn't have an allergy to them.
No, yeah. Sensitivity maybe, or something else going on. I mean, there's so many other things going on for these horses that so often it's some combination of nutritional deficiency or toxicity that's causing problems that have not been found, like not been seen in the horse's diet, that if we fix them, the problem goes away.
Yes. Yes,
Mm.
that's exactly right. And horses that had feeding problems, 5 years ago, that's not going to necessarily be affecting them, now, today. So, yeah.
So I think you've answered this question, but with a focus on welfare, what's the single biggest mistake you see horse owners make with feeding their horses?
Lack of roughage.
Mm.
Absolutely lack of roughage. And to your point, in all circumstances. So they'll say, "Oh, I give him a full hay net," but he's finished it by 11 o'clock at night. What's he doing the rest of the night? Locked up, or he's tied up next to the float. Where's the hay and things? So yeah, lack of roughage would be the single biggest mistake that I see people. The other big mistake I see, particularly in dressage and probably in showing, is chronically overweight horses. Overfeeding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You are in my mind every time I think about dressage horses and fit dressage horses. You are there, because I know that you always have your horses so fit and
Yeah.
in good body condition. I mean, in excellent body condition, but not overweight.
No, and yes, it's actually getting better. I have to say, it's better now than it used to be. And I do have a lot of elite riders who say to me, "Oh my God, I remember you," because I'm a bit blunt, and I'll see them at events and go, "Oh my God, your horse is so fat." You really need to strip some weight off it if you want it to go Grand Prix, or even novice for that matter. Yeah, that's a big.
And that ties right back to the welfare thing too, because if they've got this whopping great layer of fat on them, it's really hard to offload heat. So if you do ever compete in hot and humid conditions, particularly hot and humid, just hot is bad enough, then they're essentially insulated. And they're also carrying around 50, 60 kilos or more weight than what they should be. So that does become, I hadn't actually thought about that specifically in welfare terms, but it does become a massive welfare issue for them.
Massive issue, and so we can add that to our list of legislative options. Is that your horse must be within a target body condition score in order to compete.
I remember years and years ago, I had a top level rider come to me it was at Equitana, and the horse was just flat tired. I'm like, what can I feed it to give it some more energy? And I said, "Oh, let me come and see the horse," because I was there. So I thought I may as well go and have a look at it. He could not feel its ribs. So I said, "There's nothing we can feed this horse to give it more energy. Like it's carrying around 7 weeks worth of energy on its body. Like it's tired because it's
just having to work 10 times harder to put one foot in front of the other than it should be. So it's got nothing left." Yeah, no, that would be the other thing, is body condition is usually way too fat, and in that is the problem that people don't feed to the level of work that the horse is doing. So they and as often as not, they underfeed them when they're super fit, and you're really pumping the work into them. One line that I use with people is saying, you're pumping a level of energy into this horse for which its digestive system was never designed to cope. Like day after day after day. And this is one of the things we do have in the FEI, as opposed to, say, racing, is that they wouldn't do such long preparations and try and maintain a high level of performance for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We obviously, elite level horses are given a spell, but it's back to business. They've long campaigns and high levels of energy output, so high levels of energy input, and they weren't designed to do that, And so that you have to get, and you and I have had to get very creative in the way in which we formulate diets so that these horses are able to safely take in that that amount of feed. Yes, a lot of people, when they have horses that are very, very fit, they don't adjust accordingly. They usually look for, as you have you noted, the supplement that'll give their horse a bit more energy, or try to build a top line. And I say to them, well, is the horse eating everything you're giving him? Oh yeah, he's cleaning up. Well, feed him more. You don't need to
safely.
you don't need to change the diet. The diet you're on is absolutely fine, but he's not getting enough of it. Like, just give him a bit more. When he's leaving some, he's had enough.
Yeah.
But that's at that high end. You can't give that advice to people down the lower end, because, of course, the horses will blow their feet off.
So there's something that I'm so happy about with this new app, is that instead of just saying, so in my previous 2 versions of software, you could just say light, moderate, heavy, very heavy work. It was just one categorization of work. In the new app, we are much more along the lines of what the NRC suggested in the first place. You can actually say, in a 7-day week, the horse has got 2 days spilling, 2 days of light work, 1 day of moderate work. I've lost count now, but say 2 days of very heavy work. So instead of feeding it at like one level of feed all the time, or like instead of calculating its energy requirement just at one level of work, you can really, really cater to horses that are at different levels. So for an elite polo horse or an elite eventer, like, they're right up at that very heavy work, probably 4 or 5 days a week, and then
Right.
so that it'll catch people when they're not feeding them enough, because they'll be able to see it.
Yes, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is getting people to understand what qualifies as light, moderate, and heavy work. And because I've had to adjust my horse at some very lovely adjustment centres in various states of Australia over the years as I've moved around, and I would see people, and they'd come in on an elite level eventer or a dressage horse, for a work session. They'd spend 20 minutes on their phone around a long rein. That's not work. Might be on it for an hour, but unless, and this was what my research was focused on, is actually timing workloads, dressage, show jumpers and eventers, and actually timing it and saying, okay, this is how much work you've done. And now, of course, there's apps that'll do that for you. And very cool apps, measure heart rates and all that sort of stuff, which is really the level that you need to be at if you're serious.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So there's another, it just occurred to me as we're chatting, there's another aspect, I think, of welfare that it all ties into feeding enough forage, but is the gut-brain axis and gut health. So if we're feeding with not enough fibre and or too much grain, or both at the same time, which is the case for a lot of horses, where they don't get enough fibre and they get too much grain, their gut health gets absolutely shot to pieces. And then they're these anxious, poor
Yeah.
creatures, and their quality of life, I don't think, is very good when they're in that state.
That's exactly right. I mean, and this is something that has been known to horse nutritionists for, I would say, 20 years. We all realised about the importance of gut microbiome, and how it impacts pH, and how that impacts behaviour, and sucking and weaving and all these sorts of things, and other idiosyncratic behaviours can be moderated to some extent by looking at the microbiome and the environment in which it creates. And now, you see it in human nutrition now, by having fecal enemas and whatever else, or boluses to try and reinstate their healthy gut. And I think back to, trainers that used to let their horses lick clay and these sorts of things, and trainers that, if a horse had been on antibiotics, they'd drench it with the manure of the healthiest horse in the barn. I mean, sounds bizarre now, but it sort of makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah, no, it does make perfect sense. But yeah, I mean, that was what my PhD was looking at, was if we dump a whole heap of grain into the horse's hindgut, what does that do in there in terms of changing the pH, and we definitely did know, and that was James Rowe did his work over in WA on founder guard, and if you knocked out the lactic acid bacteria, then you could modify behaviour. So yeah, we've known it, but it's cool being able to see the bacteria in the hindgut, like down to species level now, and watch the changes in behaviour as we're actually changing the species of bacteria in the hindgut. It's like a horse can talk now. It's really cool.
It is really cool. My only concern with that, and I see this a little bit with other species, is the use of pre and postbiotics, and people, feeding supplements that contain 1 billion CFUs per gram, and you're thinking, well, it's nothing, and thinking that is now insurance against poor feeding management in horse, and it ain't.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
It's something that it's a tool that we have when the wheels fall off, but it should not be used as a crutch to enable continued, and I will call it, abuse of the horse by failing to meet its basic needs.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of fibre and a variety of fibre.
Yes, exactly. Lots of fibre, variety of fibre, and my other rule would be, don't assume horses have nutritional wisdom, because they so don't.
It's a funny one. I'm a little bit divided. On that now. Like there's and I will record a podcast on this as well. But there's a paddock, I don't know, 10 k's down the road from me that I drive past every time I go into town, and it's just oats. That's the only thing that's in the pasture. And I drove past one day, and there was one horse standing there chewing on the timber fence, and another horse over chewing on the tree, because they're looking for some other fibre.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they do, and certainly they'll seek out salt, but they'll definitely seek out fibre. And I also think too, if you give them the opportunity, they are able to avoid things like nitrate.
Yes.
When you only give them, one type of hay or one species of plant in a pasture, they can't.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely true. And I mean, you can, I don't know if you'd call it nutritional wisdom or not, but they will select for the highest fructan pastures, given the chance as well.
Yes, and give themselves lavinitis.
Not necessarily good
or
for
gastric
them.
colic. Yeah. And pony breaks into the featured, or horse breaks into the featured, and they'll go and eat half a bag of grain.
Yeah.
Because it tastes good.
But this idea that you can cafeteria feed a horse with, various herbs and supplements, and as you know, they can be, doubled over with big head or similar, and they won't know enough to lick on a limestone rock. So, don't credit them with more wisdom that they have, but certainly, they will seek out fibre. I mean, horses that are chronically underweight and emaciated will eat other horses' manures just as a way to get some fibre and something enough to do.
And I guess that brings us back full circle. I don't rely on the horse, but this is where it comes back to, we're their guardian.
Yes, exactly. We're supposed to be the higher thinking species, and that's we, in the same way as when you have children, you don't feed them just anything. You've got a responsibility to read the bloody label and do the right thing, and educate yourself so that you know what is the best thing to do. But the thing is with children, of course, there's lots of other guardians in the community. With horses, there isn't. You're it.
The really cool thing, though, is that, and time again I see this, is when you get nutrition right, and right from the horse's perspective. So lots of fibre, minimal if any grain, if you can get away with no grain, fibre variety, making sure their diet's balanced, their performance is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
They're like these machines, like they're so athletic, and they will go forever. It takes them a long time to hit fatigue. So there's still, it's not a this or that. We don't feed them for welfare or for performance. We feed them for welfare, and that's also the best thing for performance.
I think that's a really important point. And again, that's the first line that should be on the FEI's, nutrition obligations page. Is it's only by following these rules that your horse will be able to perform at its optimum.
Yeah.
You fail to follow these and your horse won't be performing. And this is why we see so many horses, breaking down and on joint supplements and so forth. It's because people have ignored some of the basic rules we've talked about, like weight control and enough fibre and not too much grain and so on.
So it's a really keep it simple, isn't it? Lots of forage. Oh, it's the same 3 rules over and over again. Lots of forage, big variety of forage, and minimise grain. Make sure you feed digestible grain or no grain. There's no rule to say that they need grain.
And educate yourself on what each of them have, to offer.
Yes.
When, variety of forage, educate yourself on, which are the varieties that is best suited to your horse and that you're able to secure and the quality and so on.
And I'm going to add in there, it doesn't have to be My Happy Horse as a nutrition app, but use something that helps you calculate what's actually in your horse's diet so that you know that it's getting everything it needs. Oh, very good.
Consult that before you talk to the numpty next to you in the float.
Yeah. Unless you've got Liz or I next to you in the float, then come and talk to us. But Liz, that's been such a good chat. I still love when I get to talk to other nutritionists because there's not that many of us, and I make myself laugh. I'll go to, I don't know, an ESS or one of the cool nutrition conferences in Europe, and then I'm like, "You're a nutritionist too." It's like this exciting. I'm like a little kid. This exciting thing when I get to talk to another nutritionist, but. Before I let you go, we have, as a guest on this podcast, a clear round, quick questions with no refusals. Are you willing to take part?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, first question, what is your all-time favourite horse, movie or book?
My favourite book is one I got when I was very young called My Horses, My Teachers by L.S. Podolsky, who was the chief barometer probably not a barometer. I know he is a barometer in Spanish riding school in Vienna. So
wow.
Love it. I love it.
Oh, I wonder if it's still in print.
Well, I don't know, but I have every time I find one in a second-hand shop, I buy it. So I've got several.
I'll have to look for it. Here's a good one. What is one myth about horse nutrition you wish would disappear forever?
Allergies.
Allergies.
Yeah.
I had one Monday that the horse was allergic to grass.
Yes, yeah. No, allergic to air
that tops it. I have to say that tops anything I've ever heard.
And that was an Australian team horse. That was really out there. Yeah.
Brené Brown, who I absolutely love, says regret is a fair but tough teacher. So, what is one thing you've done in the past with feeding your own horses you wish you could go back and change?
Well, so when I was starting out, and again, not a lot of money, my father worked for the Swan Brewery and they had access to brewer's grains. And so Dad spoke to somebody and they said, oh, this is, people feed this to horses, which of course you should never do. But we didn't know that at the time. And so he used to leave a half 44-gallon drum for people to fill. And he'd put this thing in the back of his car. It was wet as anything. It's horrible bloody stuff. And he'd bring it home for me to feed my horse to try and offset the cost. And it often had broken glass in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Been my biggest feeding mistake, the horse.
I was one of these fortunate horse-loving girls who grew up on a farm. So we had one horse, his name was Starlight. He was this poor, I don't even know how old he was. He was in his 20s, probably never had his teeth done in his entire life, which I'd go back and change that if I could. But yeah, we knew nothing about feeding our horses. I mean, they always had plenty of forage, but there's so many things that I think, I wish I could just go back and fix that, change that. I can't even remember what we used to do. We'd muster cattle all morning, and I can't remember whether we used to give our horses hay when we would go and have lunch. So we'd let them go, but there's lots and lots of things that I think, But, I'm going to throw another question in here because I'm curious to know, when you were in South Australia at the, was it Gawler 3-day event?
Yeah, it was the Gawler. Yeah, it was the World 3-day event championships here at Gawler.
And you were bringing all these international teams in and having to find them feeds. And you're West Australian, which is where most of our lupins come from. Yeah. Did you have to explain what lupins were to the rest of the world?
Well, I didn't use lupins in any of the feeds because I knew that they wouldn't have experienced them there. I had the feeds made in South Australia largely. I think Lauki feeds were really good in helping me out with that, and there was Barrastock helped and a few others at the time. There wasn't a lot of companies that were making horse feeds, but the thing that struck the international horses the most was the quality of our hay, which was a big shock to them, because they had dried hay or shedded hays and silages and so forth. So we couldn't get the silages out here. And so that'd been one of the things we did was we got them to feed some, dry hay, not silage or horsage, before they came out to acclimatise the horses to the hay. But when they were, I don't know what rubbish they were feeding over there, but when they came here and they were feeding, some good quality pasture hays and so forth that we sourced for them, the horses were putting on weight and, tipping people off and all sorts of things because they were feeling so bloody well on this beautiful hay that, the best. Not, we had lucerne as well, but mainly it was pasture hays, and they could not believe the quality of the hay. So threw them a
Yeah. There's beautiful hay down in South Australia. It's
yeah.
awesome stuff. Okay, if you could ride any horse, past or present, which one would it be?
Of Allegro,
Uh,
Charlotte Dujardin's beautiful horse. I saw
yeah.
World Games in Cannes, and he was just extraordinary. And yeah, I'd love to ride Allegro. He's a bit
Uh, yeah. They're incredible. I've never, well, I've ridden the odd very, 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 very low level dressage test, but man, I've got so much respect for those big horses and the way they can move. They're unbelievable.
yeah, he was just so beautifully trained.
Mm.
I would just love to have that feeling. I think it would be great.
Yeah, awesome. And if you had 2 minutes with every dressage rider in the world, what would you tell them?
I would I'd get on my fibre soapbox for sure and talk about the importance of good quality, fibres for their horse. And then probably the next lecture I might give them, if I was to park the herbal rant, would be about the risks of high grain, high starch diets, and monitoring that and the long term impacts that has on horses, both in terms of soundness and performance. So I would spend a bit of time, if they were high level dressage riders, I'd spend some time on that, because that is probably the bus they're most likely to be hit by. That because we keep riding them for so long, they all get Cushing's and a metabolic disorder and so forth, and a lot of it can be traced back to all long term starch and sugar abuse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
from a welfare perspective, is there anything else you'd like to add?
that would be the same thing. Would be all of life management. It's not just about managing the horse for the event. It's what you do with them when they're growing up, which can impact their performance and their longevity later on. So you're their guardian for life, not just their guardian for the show.
Absolutely. And that is a really good point. And I think it's the in-betweens that make the biggest difference, because that's by far the biggest amount of time that
Yeah,
they're with us.
yeah, exactly. So, and most of the mistakes happen. So,
Yeah. Well, they're just such amazing creatures. They're so willing, and they're so willing to do so much of what we ask them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd say if I was a horse, I wouldn't do any of it.
Mm. So we just have to send this to the FEI, I guess, to get them to
Yes, exactly.
instill our
Get their friggin' act together and call us for help.
Yeah, well, hopefully we see in the very near future that there will actually be some
I look
guidelines.
what they will. I do have every confidence. It's very much front of mind to them. They know it's an integral part. There's a little bit of a reliance on veterinary support in this space, which is great, but not always the best place to start or to finish. And I think I'm confident that they'll get the right messaging out.
Wonderful. Liz, thank you so very much. It's been wonderful.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Nerida. You have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
I love my conversations with Liz, and I hope you found something in there that shifts your thinking too. The FEI's Be a Guardian initiative represents a really important shift in how we think about our relationship with horses. We're not just owners or riders, we're guardians. And with that comes the responsibility to educate ourselves and do right by these incredible animals. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Welfare and performance are not opposing goals. When we feed our horses in a way that honours their evolution and biology, with plenty of quality forage available 24/7, minimal grain and balanced nutrition, we set them up to be the best they can be. And happy, healthy horses are high-performing horses. So here's my challenge to you. Go look at your own horse's feeding program. Are they getting enough forage? Like, really enough? Is it available all the time? Are you feeding to their actual workload? And are you measuring what you're feeding? Do you know if your horse's diet is truly meeting their nutrient requirements? If you need help figuring all of that out, go and check out the My Happy Horse Virtual Nutritionist. Remember, as Liz said so perfectly, we are the higher thinking species. These horses trust us completely. Let's be worthy of that trust. Thank you so much to Liz for sharing her wealth of knowledge and experience with us today, and thank you for listening. Until next time, keep your horses happy, healthy, and cared for like you are their guardian. If you'd like to know more about the My Happy Horse Virtual Equine Nutritionist, you can head on over to myhappy.horse. And also, while you're there, check out the Dr Nerida AI, which is me in AI format. And that version of me is happy to answer your questions about horse nutrition 24/7. Thanks again, and we'll catch you soon.